It's your Wednesday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand. Hope you guys are having a good day out there today. It's e-learning where I live in Minneapolis. Not a snow day. E-learning, that's what we do here in Minneapolis. Our two elementary school age kids. Not an official snow day with everything that's going on. They'll be learning from home today, and I'll be working from home, giving you the best podcasts I possibly can. Good show coming up today. Chris Hine covers the Timberwolves for the Tribune. He'll be with me here in just a little bit to talk about everything that's been going on with that team and leading into tonight's game against Portland, which is Pride Night, also at Target Center. So a lot of good conversations with Chris coming up here in just a little bit. Got to get to some injury concerns with the Vikings. The Brian O'Neill injury became officially more serious when he went on injured reserve on Tuesday. I've got some thoughts on that. Got a Gophers basketball thought as well. They lost to Wisconsin by 3 last night. First, though, what did I miss? Remember way back when in mid-December, almost 2 full weeks before Christmas, when you woke up disappointed that Carlos Correa was signing a mega deal with the Giants. 13 years, $350 million, blew the Twins out of the water. Twins' best reported offer being 10 years, $285 million. And he just said, well, I guess it just wasn't in the cards. They weren't going to get him, or they didn't get him. Life goes on. Let's see what happens the rest of this offseason. Then it just kind of went along for a little while, nothing official. And then the Giants postponed the news conference to introduce Correa. And then it comes to pass that they had medical concerns. The deal falls apart. And about a week after that, I think right around December 21st, right around the winter solstice, if you're scoring at home, Correa agrees to a different deal with the Mets. 12 years, $315 million in that case. And now, you might have noticed that it is now January 4th, and Carlos Correa still has not officially signed with the Mets either. We're talking 3 weeks after the Giants deal came to pass, 2 weeks after he flip-flopped to the Mets, still nothing official. What is going on here? Well, what's going on is it sounds like the Mets still have a lot of the same concerns that the Giants had, and just looking at some of the reporting lately, the Athletic's Ken Rosenthal reporting that the terms of his contract will look, quote, dramatically different once everything is official, and that it's not going to be 12 years, $315 million guaranteed. So this is becoming bizarre. Why is this happening after all of the terms are negotiated? Why is this happening after the fact? What is there in this injury history, specifically to his ankle from this injury that happened several years ago, that is causing all the holdups? Did the Twins know about all this? Would they have had similar concerns? Is this why they were going to quote unquote do 10 years? Is it a good thing they didn't end up signing him if there's enough red flags now from two teams to make this a reality? I don't know. I just find it very strange that we're now 3 weeks into this thing and Correa still hasn't officially signed. Not a great sign for him, not a great sign for the Mets. I'm sure this will get resolved eventually. I mean, Correa's been relatively healthy when he's been on the field the last few years, but there obviously are these concerns. So wondering when this is going to get resolved, because this is hanging out there now. It is now 2023. This is something that should have been resolved a few weeks ago, and it's still hanging out there right now. Like I said at the jump, Gophers men's basketball team loses by 3 at Wisconsin, 63-60 on its face. Not a bad outcome, right? The Gophers lose, but their first 5 losses this year to Power 5 opponents had been much more lopsided. They made this one close and competitive against the Badgers, came back from a pretty significant deficit to give themselves a chance at the end. Still, a couple things from this game. One, they still couldn't close. Here's Ben Johnson kind of talking about what undid them in this game.
I thought we showed good resolve and good fight to climb back from 15 on the road. Just again, it's such a possession type game, especially in this league, and you got to value the ball. And for us, you have 20 turnovers, you put it in a really tough spot to pull it out, especially on the road. So we got to find a way to do a better job. But I like the fight. I like the competitiveness. Obviously, we did a pretty good job on the backboards, which we wanted to do, and we had the right mentality there. We got to be able to execute a little bit better, taking care of the ball.
Those things are certainly true. And the larger point that I would make right now is this game was not very high up there on my radar in terms of what was going on yesterday. I did know that they were playing the Badgers, but it wasn't like one of those things where it's like, I got to sit down and make this appointment viewing. I've got to make sure I'm paying attention to this game. And that's kind of sad, right? That's kind of a sad place for this program to be, that a game against your rival early in the Big Ten season does not rise to the level of must-see TV, at least in my estimation. And maybe you felt differently. Maybe you watched this game. Maybe you're keenly attuned to what's going on early in the Ben Johnson tenure. But right now, for me, I'm still kind of I'm vaguely curious. I want to see where this thing is headed, but I don't think we've seen enough evidence of anything good going on yet to make me think this is appointment viewing. So that's a dangerous spot for a program to be. And again, this is just my feeling on it right now. This is not necessarily reflective of how everybody else feels, but my own personal feeling on this team right now is that they are not very front brain for me. Let me just put it that way. They're buried pretty far on my sports depth chart right now, and I don't know exactly what it will take to get out front a little bit more, except maybe for a few more victories or maybe at least a few more performances like they had Tuesday night at Wisconsin, where they got close and it felt like maybe some things are starting to fall into place.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake. With 24/7 gaming, the good times never have to end. And you can satisfy your cravings at our restaurants and bars. Or relax in one of our luxurious hotel rooms. Those that play together, stay together. And don't forget to join Club M so you can spark new memories and bask in the rewards along the way. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
Good to have Chris Hine back on Daily Delivery. First time in 2023, but an often 2022, 2021 guest on this show. Chris, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, Mike. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Trying to cut down on background noise here. I've told Chris we got a sick 3-year-old home today, so we're trying to minimize any of the distractions. But we're doing all right. He's not in too bad a shape. He kind of knows the drill as best he can. So, Chris, let's talk about the Timberwolves. 6-game losing streak, including that ugly loss on New Year's Eve to Detroit. Then they win on Monday against the best team in the West, Denver. Again, Denver coming off a back-to-back. So, take that for whatever it's worth. But a lot of key players out of the lineup, and still they managed to win that game. First, take me through the 6-game losing streak and kind of what, where frustration brought them to.
Yeah, I think almost anything that could go wrong did in that 6-game losing streak. The thing that I have always harped on with this team, I wrote about it during the 6-game losing streak, is rebounding. And I think it showed up in a major way, just their inability to get rebounds, especially in second halves, late in close games. And it really is, to me, more of an effort thing than a scheme game plan kind of thing. If you want to go get a ball, just go get it. That fourth quarter of the Detroit game was a great example of that, where I think if you just put a little more effort into going and getting some of these rebounds, you will get them. So it's my biggest issue with this team. It's not even an issue that is necessarily because of the Rudy Gobert trade, because this was a problem for them last year. And it's been a problem for some of the tertiary guys on the roster, some of the bench guys, rotation guys, and the guards who don't want to rebound after these long rebounds. So I think that was the number one issue with this team, but it also speaks to the level of effort and intensity and urgency that this team has, because that is where that can show up on the floor. So they lose to Detroit. They have this players only meeting behind closed doors. The locker room took a long time to open up after Saturday's game, which when you're covering a team is usually an indicator of a players only type of meeting going on. So it took a long time for the locker room to open up. They don't reveal specifics as to what's said, which is usually kind of how these things go, but they do talk about all the issues that they need to correct and in a hurry. And they did it on Monday night, but the challenge is always with this team is, can they do it consistently? Monday night they did it. They rebounded a lot better. They had defensive effort and intensity no matter who was on the floor. And look, they were, they're down to players right now that if the rotation was fully healthy would not be seeing the floor at the moment. Both guys on two-way contracts, Matt Ryan and Luka Garza, were seeing minutes. You don't see that every night in the NBA. So that's the challenge. Bottling what they did Monday night and carrying it forward, which has been a challenge for this team.
The rebound and effort stuff seems to have mystified Chris Finch quite a bit, the head coach. And there's only so much he can do, but there's some of obviously rotation stuff he can do, maybe some scheme stuff he can probably do. As he's addressed that throughout the year, and now we're almost halfway into the season. They're 17-21. Do you get the sense that he's just as frustrated about that as everybody else?
I think so, and has been for weeks and months. We ask him about it all the time. It's a frequent topic of conversation, especially after they lose. And it's kind of like a cycle. It's almost like in some ways we're asking the different versions of the same question, and he's giving different versions of the same answer. And it really just boils down to want to and physicality and effort, which are the big things that this team tends to miss in important moments. I think back to the New Orleans game and the deciding bucket in that was New Orleans getting an offensive rebound, getting it to Zion, who then gets fouled. Detroit had that one possession where they had 3 offensive rebounds on one possession, and the whole crowd started booing in the middle of the possession, which I have never seen before. Right. So that just speaks to the core of this team. And if this team is going to recover, because honestly, if they just rebound a little bit better in a lot of their losses this year, they probably win at least half of those games. But they can't, and they didn't. So they got to improve it going forward. It's strange on nights when they shoot like 50% or 53, 54%, and they're losing by 8 or 10 points because they've given the other team like 20 more shot attempts. It's absurd. It's the biggest problem that they have to correct in the second half of the season.
Now, Rudy Gobert was supposed to help with some of this, but obviously the problems have run a lot deeper than him, and even his numbers haven't really trended upward in the rebounding department. Even Monday night, he didn't have that much of an impact rebounding, even if he is a big body in there. There's been a lot of hot takes about the Gobert trade, obviously, especially in the midst of the 6-game losing streak, especially when there's been some frustration, some frustrating moments. Where do you think they stand right now as an organization as they think about how to maximize this, how to take this and make it work to the best of their ability? Do they feel like it's the things around him, or do they feel like it's him, or what? Or how do you see it?
I think that I haven't really delved too far into this, but just looking from afar and knowing how front offices tend to think, they only have 19 games of what the ideal partnership is supposed to look like. They only have 19 games of Carl and Rudy on the floor together. So, I'm not sure how much you can draw from the way Rudy has played over this last couple of weeks, just because the main partnership has not been playing together. I will say that one theory I have as to why you look at the box score and Rudy has like maybe only 4 or 5 rebounds on a given night is because in Utah, one of the things that Rudy did and that Utah did in Utah was they limited the number of threes that opposing teams took. So that eliminates the number of longer rebounds that go beyond Rudy's grasp out to like that second and third ring of rebounds. That does not happen with the Wolves. They do not limit opponents from shooting threes. So they have more long rebounds. They have more rebounds that Gobert can't get to just because he's under the basket or near the basket and these rebounds are flying over his head. So that's one of the theories I have as to why his rebound numbers are down. It's a product of the defense that they have played around him, because another one of my theories with this team is that with Rudy Gobert, he is not a singular entity unto himself the way that it was kind of billed he would be. He needs the people around him to be playing at a high level. He needs defenders to be guarding and rotating around him at a high level. He needs guys on offense to be playing at a high level to help get him the ball and ball movement to be happening to where he gets his, looks in space under the basket. He cannot necessarily affect a game by himself if the players around him are not also playing at a high level. And that's what we saw in the playoff series where he quote unquote got played off the floor. You can make the argument that it wasn't necessarily Rudy getting played off the floor, it was his teammates playing him off the floor. But that's also, indicative of what you need when you have Rudy Gobert on your team. And if you don't have that effort around him, he himself cannot maximize and cover for others' mistakes in such a way.
Speaking of theories, I love conspiracy theories. And when I saw the initial Timberwolves injury report before that Monday game, it was the usual suspects. And then I thought to myself, they had a players only meeting. I wonder if there's going to be any surprise additions to this as they maybe create some gentlemanly absences in this game as they work through some rotations. And lo and behold, D'Angelo Russell showed up with an illness and didn't play in Monday's game, and they played quite well. Now, that's just my wild conspiracy theory that was a manufactured illness, and they want to see what life looks like without D'Lo, because they're probably going to be life without D'Lo at some point here in the very near future, whether it's trade deadline, offseason, whatever it is. Whatever it is, where do you put him in terms of he's been shooting? He had a really nice streak there where he was shooting well, but obviously defensively, he's got some liabilities. Some effort stuff has been a liability. Where do you think they are with his game right now? My conspiracy theories aside.
Tough to say. It really is tough to say, because when he's on, he can be really good. And you saw that during early December, mid-December, when he kind of carried them to a couple of wins. He did that last year too. But overall, throughout the course of a season, and then you saw it in the playoffs last year, those moments just aren't consistent enough, I don't think. And it's tough to justify the salary when those moments aren't coming on a more regular basis. So it's just hard to gauge. It's the number one question moving forward in the near term, I think, with this team, is what happens to D'Angelo Russell. Is he gone by the deadline? Is he gone after the season? Is he back on a smaller deal in some way, shape, or form? What happens with him? And I don't think we have an answer to what that's going to be just yet. But I will say that I don't think this year, being a contract year or anything, has brought out anything different in D'Lo or anything that we didn't already know about him. He's going to carry you on some nights, but there are also going to be nights where, like Saturday, where he plays like 32 minutes and he doesn't get a rebound. So you get what you get. And I do think that he's a point guard in the NBA. He's an NBA point guard, and that commands, a decent salary. It doesn't command $30 million a year, but he is a starting point guard in the NBA. Somebody will give him some money somewhere. I just don't know how the Wolves will handle this situation, whether it'll be them that gives him that money at a lower rate than what he's making now, or Are they going to trade him? It really is the big question roster wise for the next few months here.
Without him in the lineup, Monday we saw a lot of Anthony Edwards being primary ball handler, and he, I think Chris Finch talked about it. Anthony Edwards talked about it after the game, like, Finch kind of helping him through that. I kind of like Point Ant. It feels like it puts the ball in his hands, lets him be creative, gets him into the flow, both on offense and defense. Is that how viable is that to you as a strategy going forward? As a not necessarily permanent, but him being a primary ball handler.
Yeah, I think that's where this is trending, is him having the ball in his hands a lot more, just because he will attract so much attention when he has the ball in his hands. Teams are going to have to send two guys at him, blitz him, do whatever to try and slow him down. And that's just, I think, going to create a lot more opportunities for this offense, given his explosiveness. I think it helps when you have a guy like Kyle Anderson out there as well. I think that alleviates a lot of pressure on it, because Kyle Anderson can take over in those moments. And I also think that when Russell is in the lineup, it alleviates a lot of pressure on Russell as well, to have Ant handling a lot of on-ball duties. Because I think Russell can be pretty good when he gets to mix in playing off the ball a decent amount with playing on the ball. So I think that's where long-term, this is kind of where this is headed. Like the offense, for so long, the conversation has been, we need to build around Cat. The Wolves need to build around Cat and his offensive prowess. I think you have to pivot that and say, how do we maximize Ant? And eventually when Carl gets back, how does he fit into that? We had some of those conversations when they had a little 3-game winning streak amid all of this losing, where Ant was just playing lights out basketball because he had the ball in his hands a lot. It's like, this seems like the future. This seems like the way to go. It's like it's Ant as the driving force, the 1A option on offense, not Carl. And so I think moving forward, especially as it relates to Ant's development, you're going to want to see that a lot more in the next few months.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's interesting. I mean, and part of what's driving this too is Jordan McLaughlin's been out for a while now. They've been missing Taurean Prince. And of course, you talked about Towns. I mean, McLaughlin in the context of point guards, but just those kind of longer term injuries that have been kind of sitting out there. Are we any closer to clarity? I think I saw that Prince at least was kind of maybe scrimmaging a little bit with some of the other guys, maybe getting close. But do we have a guess or a gauge on when any of these guys might be back?
Yeah, Taurean Prince, starting to scrimmage a little bit, so he seems to be kind of ramping up towards making a return, which is these were things he was not doing over the last couple of weeks, so that's a positive sign. Jordan McLaughlin was in the locker room yesterday, still in a boot. I think he's hopeful that it's not going to be too much longer, but it's a calf injury, and Carl and Jordan are dealing with a calf injury. It's just you don't want to put a definitive timetable on it. We saw Jordan have this calf injury, come back for a couple of games, and then re-aggravated it, and now he's been out for the last few weeks here. So they're going to be very careful when he comes back, or kind of ramping him back up. But he's still in a boot, so you don't like to see the dreaded boot. Carl, the word has been, for the last couple of times we've asked Finch, still weeks away. Again, because of the nature of the injury, hard to pinpoint a return date on that.
No, that's fair. It's just you start to get that kind of antsiness to see all these things play out, especially as they've had this disappointing start to the season, and they've tried to be patient through all of it. And like you said, I think the biggest thing is, can they establish any consistency? And we haven't seen much of that this year, and that was their problem last year for a lot of the time too, until they kind of got things going in the second half of the year. Before I move forward to one other thing I want to ask you about, what's your level of confidence in their ability to sustain some of these good vibes that started on Monday?
I've covered this team now for 5 years. Of this iteration of the Wolves. A lot of the guys that are on this team I've covered for the last 3 years. A lot of the guys that are seeing minutes now. I don't know. I look at the second half last year, and I think they have that in them, right? They have a run like that in them where they can really ramp up and play well. But given all that they're trying to accomplish and all the pieces that they're trying to make fit together, it would tamper my optimism in that regard. And just given some of the issues that keep popping up, the same recurring issues such as transition defense, rebounding, turnovers, there's still issues. They haven't corrected them over the course of multiple seasons now. So I tend to be more on the skeptical side that they can keep this right moving forward.
Prove it mode is a good mode to be in always with the Timberwolves. Talking with Chris Hine here, beat writer for the Star Tribune covering the Wolves. Last thing, Chris, you've written about this at various points this year, the Timberwolves and their relationship with the gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender community, some issues that have happened with Anthony Edwards. You wrote about Rudy Gobert liking something on social media. They have their Pride Night on Wednesday when they play the Trailblazers. Where do you think they're at organizationally? What are you getting a sense from any fans you've talked to for, in terms of how they view this organization, or where do you think they're at right now with that relationship?
Yeah, I'll have a story due or will be up by the time people hear this podcast. I think there's a lot of nuance and mixed emotions as to how Wolves fans who are LGBTQ plus are feeling this year. And I think most of it revolves around Ant, even given what happened with Rudy a few weeks ago, because Ant was such a player that has drawn a well of affection from the fan base. It hit a lot of people really hard when that video came out in September. And I think there's, with some time being passed now, I think some of those feelings have faded for people. I think they want to like Ant again. They want to root for him, especially because he is such a part of their favorite team. There's some people who are still turned off by it. And, I hope if you read the piece that you'll see some of the nuance of emotion that people are feeling, because sports is one of the areas where LGBTQ people have traditionally not felt welcome, even amid the societal changes that have happened for the good in that department. It is still one of the areas where they feel the most excluded, and incidents like that tend to just reinforce that feeling of unwelcomeness. But I do think that there's a lot of want to want to feel the joy that Anthony Edwards brings to the basketball court, and I think it's been an interesting discussion for people to reconcile a lot of the feelings that they've had. And I hope that people read the piece with open eyes when it comes to seeing people try to talk out and explain what they're feeling inside in terms of both realms of their lives.
I look forward to reading it, and you guys should all go read that as well. Chris Hine, always love having you on the Daily Delivery podcast. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see if the Wolves can stack another good performance on top of Mondays when they play Portland on Wednesday. But like you said, you never know with this team. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Mike.
Good stuff, as always, from Chris, who noted on Twitter, I didn't realize this before I talked to him, that this was he came up on 5 years at the Star Tribune just the other day. So congratulations to Chris on that. He's been a valued guest on Daily Delivery. I was his editor for a while there on the Wolves coverage as well. Great guy to work with, talented writer. So congrats to Chris on 5 years at the Star Tribune. Looking forward to reading many more things from him and hearing many more things that he has to say on this podcast and beyond. A couple more things at the end here, finishing up with the cooler. Brian O'Neill on injured reserve. This is not great news for the Vikings, even if it was headed this way, even if it felt like that was going to be the logical conclusion when Kevin O'Connell the other day said that his calf injury was pretty significant. That means he's going to be out, and unless the Vikings make it to the Super Bowl, he is not eligible to play this season. So that means your starting right tackle, you're probably your best offensive lineman, one of your most consistent, healthy offensive lineman is not going to be in the lineup. Obviously not this weekend against the Bears, obviously not for any of whatever playoffs happened in the NFC. Those would be 3 possible games that he would miss if they're lucky to get that far. And without him, hard to imagine them going on a deep run. You never know. Maybe Oli Udoh steps in and has a postseason run, but that is some tough news for the Vikings, who have had a lot of seasons derailed over the years. I detailed that on the Ramball blog the other day, just how many seasons since 2016 have been upended by offensive line woes. This year felt like it was different. They felt like they had kind of finally gotten some things sorted out, and now the injury news here really, really hurting them. So we'll see how that plays out, but a big blow for the Vikings, who are still 12-4 right now, a strange season, but not a lot of momentum right now as they go towards the postseason here in a couple of weeks. Finish with the Coolers. Speaking of offensive linemen, this quote from a Buffalo offensive lineman really caught my eye the other day in regards to his teammate Damar Hamlin. Bills left tackle Deion Dawkins on SportsCenter saying, quote, "We are vulnerable humans. Our brother is fighting. We have just taken off all that armor, and we're just human. We're united with just positive vibes and just positive spirits and positive prayer. We're all human, and we try to be our best all we possibly can. And at the end of the day, we are humans, and we have families, and we care, and we cry, and we're vulnerable, and we have emotion, and we feel the same pain that the regular person does." That's just a great sentiment. He had that on SportsCenter the other day. Just a great sentiment talking about his teammate, Damar Hamlin, who had, obviously we know the story by now, had a cardiac arrest on the field Monday night the other day, and just the range of emotions, everything that's going on right now with that situation as we wait to see if he's able to pull through medically and how that is going. Sounds like there was a couple encouraging developments on Tuesday. Sounds like his oxygen levels are improving. Sounds like he's in a better spot now than he was the day before. That's always a good sign when talking about a medical situation, but definitely still watching this as so many of us are. Speaking of which, I am planning to have a cardiologist on Thursday's show to talk a little bit more about just what exactly happened and what the situation, what might have happened, I guess, in this situation on the field and how the recovery process might look. So we'll get into that more on Thursday's show as well. Until then, be safe out there. Don't go anywhere unless you have to. It is not nice outside. A lot of snow, a lot of slick roads, things like that. So just be careful if you're going anywhere. Hunker down with the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 past episodes of Daily Delivery if you missed them. They're all still good. They're all still relatively fresh, not backdated. We're all good here. So check them out. Have a safe day, and we'll be back at it again on Thursday.